Community projects can bring numerous benefits to a neighborhood, including improved infrastructure, increased safety, and a greater sense of community pride. However, it is not uncommon for communities in Nigeria to face a dilemma when it comes to taking ownership of these projects. While reasons for the failure of communities to take ownership are numerous, overall, the dilemma of communities taking ownership of community projects in Nigeria is a complex issue with multiple contributing factors. This will be our focus on the discussion this morning, and we have joining us in the studio to give perspectives to this, Ojoluwa Ibiloye. He is the Executive Director, Rural Pro. Thank you so much for joining us. And also Abdurrahim Okpeyemi, he is a development consultant here to talk about, the taking ownership as far as community development is concerned. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you for
Good morning, and thank you for having us.
All right. Well, let me start with you, Ojoluwa. Let's talk about the role of citizens in community development. What role specifically are citizens supposed to play in that regard?
Oh, thank you very much. Governance is not only for politicians or elected officials. It is the responsibility of everyone in the society. It's starting from electing our political leaders and serving as watchdogs in the society, holding elected officials accountable, and also have a constant communication with elected officials across the three tiers of government in the country: the federal, the states, and the local government. And the best way to understand what the people want is to ask them, listen to them, to understand their challenges. So it doesn't just end at going to register for PVC, picking up your PVC, voting on election day, but throughout the 4-year term, citizens have the responsibility to contribute, watch over their communities, and also support the government with their needs. And also when they see something, they ought to say something. Because by building a culture of productive relationship between the governed and the government, that is the only way that we can build a sustainable society. So, because elected officials are not there to serve their own interest. They are there to serve the interest of millions of the electorate. And if we sit back and start pointing fingers at them, then we should also ask ourselves as citizens the question of what are we doing to help these people with the necessary information that will guide them to deliver their promises. Because let's say, for instance, federal representatives in Abuja, they don't get to go to their constituency every day or every week, though it is their responsibility to keep in touch with their people. But through maybe constituency offices, their special assistants, they continue to gather opinions, information that will inform legislative debates, thereby informing participatory governance in the country. So it is the role of citizens to support elected officials to succeed.
All right, now, so Ibrahim, let me come to you now. Let's talk about community projects in general. Now, if a project is cited in a particular community, it's meant for the people of that community to actually use. Does that automatically translate to ownership? Does that mean they own it? Or is it the responsibility of the person that actually brought that project there to oversee the maintenance of that project? How does it go? What's the relationship?
Okay, thank you for that question. Ideally, whatever development project that is cited in a particular community is supposed to be owned by the community. But the reality is that starting from the initiation of some of these projects, the community are not carried the reality is that communities are not carried along from the initiation to the implementation. And after implementation, you just want the community to take ownership of project. It doesn't work that way. Ideally, because I work closely with communities as a development consultant, and what we do if we want to do projects. Sometimes we work with politicians to also bring projects. Sometimes we work with NGOs to intervene in some community depending on the need of that particular community. So what we do from our point of view as the development consultants is we do what we call need assessment in that particular community. And when you are doing a need assessment, the communities are being carried along to know their immediate need and the scale of priority. Because you can't just go to a community and give them a primary health care where they need borehole for water supply. You don't give them road when they need hospitals. So you need to know from the people. And if you start from there, you are carrying them along from the beginning. So it will not, the ownership will not even be a big deal to them because they already know the reason why they have such projects in their society.
But is that an excuse, really? Because if we say we are a community and what we need is a school, and then somebody comes and builds us a primary healthcare center, we'll say, okay, we are not going to take care of that healthcare center because that is not what we want?
No, it depends on, like I said, it depends on the need of the people.
Exactly.
Like Ojolu had mentioned, you need to support your leaders, you need to support the people in government if they bring projects. But then the reality is that normally you own whatever you are part of, actually. And sometimes you just see people, like you mentioned, primary health care, people that are even working within the primary health care are not even people from our community. Some of those processes that should make us feel that we are actually part of this, they are actually not considered. But then that's not, like you mentioned, that is not a justification for not taking ownership of projects, like supporting them, maintaining the providing security for some of those infrastructure amenities provided for the communities. But then I'm just bringing out the reasons why some of these projects are actually not owned by the society, by the community. And in some cases, people that brought the project itself, they don't even want you to own it. The intention is not for you to own it as a community. The intention, it's more of political correctness than even the drive for development in most of these cases. Have you seen a primary health care that is just there without even facilities to even run it? How do you want the society or the community to come and take ownership of such projects? And the law is actually clear to some of these things. The Constitution has provided that the role of government in the society and the role of citizens also is being stated in the Constitution. If, as a citizen of the country, I'm paying my tax as at when due, and you, at your own head as a government, it's more like a contract. If you are not respecting your own part of the contract, why do you want me to respect my own? And it's not even negotiable. It's something that's carry me along, and automatically I will support you in it. That's the way it is in the real time of it, because we work closely with community people, and you see them talking about it over and over again, telling you why. How do you want me to actually be part of it? Traditional rulers are not carried along. The religious leaders within the community are not carried along. The CBOs, community-based organizations that are supposed to be actively involved in some of these projects are not carried along. And these are people that mobilize support for you as a government.
Okay, so what would you say, in your own observation, are some of the hindrances of making sure that communities actually play their role in terms of maintaining projects and the rest of them?
I think currently in Nigeria, the attention is more on the federal government, whereas people are already forgetting that there's a government at the local level. And that is the most important level of government when it comes to participation in the country. As we speak currently, there are over 200 local governments in this country without elected local councils. They are being run by committees appointed by state governments. Anambra, for instance, since 2014, that was the last time local government election was held. So why am I saying this? The constitutional structure that the people should build their participation on, the opportunity to participate in making the decisions that affect them, is being taken away gradually. And it is like local government autonomy, it has been an age-long debate, and it is becoming unrealistic that we need to refocus attention and discussion around that level of government, because everybody, including the president, is from a local government. And we cannot get it right, because we are talking about community, we are actually talking about people at that level, individuals and communities and their leaders. And if the platform is not there to even communicate, then how do we now ensure responsive governance? When projects, plans, and programs are not responsive to the needs of the people, then it means we are wasting billions of naira on this project. And elected officials, sometimes, they don't even know the reason why they were elected in the first place. In my organization, we've been running local projects like Citizens at the Center, trying to put citizens at the center of decision making. Okay, for instance, in Gogolada Area Council here in Abuja, there are 10 political wards. We've been to all the 10 political wards, creating community dialogues, trying to identify their needs, the work of the local government, the work of the councillors. And after giving the opportunity to voice out their needs, we rank those needs according to priority. Then we now translate into their shared priorities. Then we take these shared priorities to the elected officials. This is what your people want. And also, we also try to bridge the gap by bringing elected officials at that level and citizens under one roof to discuss the aspirations and what they want for their community.
So sometimes I find that it's one thing to know what you want and to organize and put forward proposals and the rest of them, and it's another for it to happen. You find that there's a paucity of funds being suffered by the local levels. We've heard you talk about local government autonomy, how that sometimes governors they appropriate funds that are supposed to go to the local governments into other interests and all that. How can we deal with that?
Thank you very much for that question. It's a fact that Nigeria is actually faced with inadequate funding for some of the projects that should affect the lives of an average Nigerian. But then it's good that we build capacity from the grassroots, build capacity of the community, sensitize them on the way they can go about this. We have communities in this country that are doing projects themselves. They contribute money to buy transformers. They contribute money to construct roads, to do culverts for themselves. They contribute roads to even do to provide security for themselves in this country. Those are the kind of support that we are looking at. But then, that's not the ideal. If government is actually working, community will not be doing all that. What the role community will be playing will just be supportive, not necessarily taking the lead in providing some of these services. And again, you realize that if you look at it critically, you realize that the problem we're facing in the country is not even the paucity of funds. Because you see a lot of funds allocated to different projects with limited monitoring and evaluation. And if you don't monitor the impact of projects, there is possibility that you'll be misappropriating funds. Okay, for instance, in the same country that we're talking about paucity of funds, we are talking every day about corruption. We are talking every day about how a particular individual can embezzle as much as 30 billion naira, 90 billion naira in this country, and we are talking about paucity of fund. But what I think rather, the problem I identify rather isn't paucity of fund, but collaboration, interagency collaboration or intergovernmental collaboration. Because I believe that since we have, for instance, Ministry of Works at the federal level, we have Ministry of Works at the state level, and we have supervisory councillors for works at the local government level. If all these structures are working hand in hand, I think we have the problem of development projects not being implemented accordingly or not being implemented based on the need of the people will be reduced drastically. Because at that level, the councillor, supervisory councillor for works is already informing the commissioner of works on the needs of its people when it comes to the work, his own department or ministry. And the other person also is working hand in hand for whatever federal project that is coming from the federal government is also aligning or addressing some of the immediate works need within a particular state, not necessarily, not senator or an House of Rep member just go in and say, oh, I want to facilitate constituency project for my people. I just want to create just for them to know that I'm working. But it doesn't work that way most of the time. There should be coherence between some of these projects.
So you talk about communities taking responsibility to do certain things for themselves. And I find that sometimes there's a lack of structure in doing that. And you have experiences where people are being extorted. You have experiences where, you know, just groups will just come together and just start collecting money from people. And at the end of the day, you don't get to see what, you know, the money is being used for and all that. How can we have a better coordination and structure in that regard?
The issue of accountability is really big in our polity, that we need to drastically do something about it, and it is not only by enacting laws. We as individuals, we have to really be accountable to ourselves, even at the family level, in school, in our society, at workplace, and everywhere. So I think the level of awareness among citizens we need to really raise the level of awareness. How much is going to my local governments every month from the Federal Account Allocation Committee? How much is going to the state? How much is the federal government getting? And what is my representative debating about in the parliament, both at the state and the federal level? So we will now know how these monies are flying around. And apart from the government support, there are a lot of international donors out there pumping money into the system to provide healthcare. Bin Laden that spent a lot of money in our country, some foreign missions as well, spending money. But you will still see at the end of the day that 133 million people are poor in the country. Where is the money going to? Where is the evidence of the work done so far? It now means that we, the citizens, we need to actually sit tight and ask the right questions by throwing ourselves out there to actually participate in the process. In November, you know, there's been an issue of dwindling revenues and stuff. In November 2022, the FAC shared about around $904 billion. And then among the local government got about 204 billion, naira, sorry, not dollars, but billion naira. Is this money going to the right places? And okay, a project just started in my community. How much? Because if we have councillors, they are accountable to citizens, just like, because politicians sometimes, they've created barricade around themselves that it is only during elections when they are campaigning that can go close to them. But government must be open. So
in your opinion now, is the local government autonomy that you touched on earlier, local government autonomy that you talked about, is it the silver bullet that we actually need to be able to make sure that these community development projects are cited where they're supposed to be cited?
Yes.
Okay.
And on the other hand, the problem we are facing with local government autonomy is right there in the Constitution. Section 7, subsection 1 provides that there shall be a system of democratically elected local government in Nigeria. And if you read further, it now says, government of every state shall ensure its structure, finance, periodic elections, and so it has already placed the local government in the country under the table of state government. And to amend that constitution, that's a part of the constitution, you will need to send, if it is passed at the National Assembly level, it will still go back to the states. Who controls this? Well, majority of these states' houses of assembly. So it is a challenge that only the people can actually demand for. Although the Constitution of Nigeria does not expressly state political participation as a right, but there are other rights that can be attributed to political participation. And also there are international conventions like International Convention on Civic and political rights. It guarantees access.
Okay. All right. Now, if you look at the political campaigns ongoing right now, ahead of the general elections, there's a lot of talk going on. But you find that the discussions are directed towards perhaps only the presidential candidates, you know, in the election. Not much have we heard about the candidates at the subnational levels, those vying for state assemblies, vying for local government chairmen, you know, and all of that. How can we engage better at that local level? And what are the things that the people can do to hold those who are aspiring to hold those offices accountable? How best can we approach it?
Okay, thank you very much. I was about to talk about that before you asked the question, and it's very, very important, especially during this electoral season, that we do the right thing at the right. We can't continue to be doing the same thing the same way, and we expect different results. You agree with me that you, at the community level, you agree with me that we cannot give what we don't have. And like I mentioned earlier, capacity building is very, very key. When we talk about capacity building, not necessarily on how to say how to repair phones or on issue-based advocacy, especially engaging with our our leaders at that community level, because you see an average community person going to meet a politician, having access to a politician, which ordinarily not everybody have access to them, having access to a politician, and what you put on the table is, please, my daughter is getting married next week, how do you support me during this election period? Because you know that he needs you during this period. But then we should think on how we can be engaging them better on issue that is more of a community need oriented, not necessarily our personal thing. You don't carry your personal problems to go and meet a leader and you expect him to perform.
Unfortunately,
in
that's how how the political culture is.
No, but that doesn't mean
in Nigeria.
That doesn't mean that's the ideal.
Of course, I agree.
So because moving forward now, at our different ways, the media is already doing their thing, the civil society are doing their thing too, and individual advocates too should also go to the community, because you actually come from a local government, you come from a political world, I come from a local government, I come from a political world. From your own level of exposure, your own knowledge and experience, you can actually, maybe one of those days, maybe when you go home for Salah or anytime you go home, mobilize people, talk to them on how things are being done, the right thing to be done on how to engage with some of our leaders, for us to get the best out of them. Because I can tell you that whatever leaders that we're producing in this country actually come from a family. And coming from a family, they also come from a community. And all of them also have family members that we can actually use as gatekeepers to assess them, to say, oh, see, this is what this person is doing, and this is the way it can actually do it better to make impact in this community. So I think we should start from sensitization and awareness of our persons first, of people at the community level, to see how we can build their capacity on how to engage with government officials and political office holders on the right thing to be done in effecting change in our society.
Well, this current culture that you just talked about right now has taken a root, very deep roots in our community. Definitely you'll find a situation whereby somebody will have access to a politician or somebody aspiring to become a leader within the community, and then what he puts forward is just like the example that you gave. Example, my personal issues. My wife has just given birth. I need you to help me out. I want to take a second wife. Please help me out. You understand? Does that point to a failure of community-based organizations? Because a lot of these communities actually have community-based organizations which are supposed to be the ones playing these kind of roles, serving as maybe a go-between between the community members and, of course, those in positions of power. Does that point to a failure in them carrying out their responsibility?
No. It's not only community-based organization. It's more of a societal problem, because you agree with me, at our elementary social science, we were taught about socialization, agents of socialization, and the role those agents of socialization, like the family, the school, religions, institution, peer group, media play in actually molding the society, individuals in the society, is very, very key. And what do we get from those agents of religion today? What is our institution, our schools teaching? What is our religious institution teaching? What is even the media teaching? What, if you look at all those structures now, are they really playing their role the way they should play in society?
It's such a complicated issue in the sense that you find that sometimes even when you have politicians who are actually interested in, citing projects that will be beneficial to all, you understand, and willing to do that, these people still come with their personal issues, and when you don't do them, you become unpopular. You become the community. People begin to fight you because they begin to say, spread stories about you, how you are stingy and the rest of them, and that you don't care about the plight of the people and the rest of them. So you have it's not only the politicians here that are the problem, but even followership problem. People are more focused on stomach infrastructure. What are we going to get? Whatever you are coming, whatever plans you have, whatever ideas you have to improve the good of the generality of the people is really not of interest to some of them. And they try to, if you don't dance to their tune, they try to sabotage you and, make you look, unpopular and the rest of them. So I don't know, how can we, address some of these issues?
I think Ibrahim already touched on what we should be doing. Citizens orientation, civic orientation, and education is very, very important. But how do you preach such message to a man who is hungry and struggling to feed his family of 6, 7, or 8? When poverty has been weaponized, it now becomes difficult to actually sensitize the people. But that doesn't mean that we will not do the work. The issue we have at hand today, it is cultural. And trying to change a culture, it takes time. It means you have to destroy, collapse, and rebuild. Let me cite an example to know that it's not only on the citizens' side. In one of the local governments where we have worked, we wanted to organize a workshop, like a training, for the councillors in that local government. We're trying to mobilize them, get agreement on the dates and how everything will go. Then, because we wanted to do, later discovered because we wanted to do that workshop within the local government, those councillors decided to frustrate the effort. Why? Because they want us to take that workshop to another state so that they can
travel.
They can travel
and get
escorted from the chairman. And they've been attending workshops like that where they get money, just go there, learn nothing, come back. At the end of the day, they gave a condition. If we are going to host it in that local government, we are going to give them participation allowance. Those are councillors elected by the people to serve the people.
And you are doing this as a civil society organization not as a government.
Not as a government. I am a young man who is just trying to give back to the society. And those people old enough to be my father looked at me and told me all what I have said. So you should know that it is systemic and cultural. But we just need to speak the language that the local people understand. That if you sell the next 4 years for 5,000 naira or lower than that, just divide that 5,000 naira by how many, the number of days we have in 4 years. So that means if you don't get anything for the next 4 years, you have already monetized the entire period. And if we make people understand that, yes, this is where we can go to as a society if we do this and if we do that. Majority of, listened to people after organizing World Town Hall meetings that when reacting, they'll say, this is actually the first time that they're getting to know that you can actually go to your councillor, your local government chairman, and hold them accountable and ask them questions or communicate their needs. And they have spent 60 years, 50 years in Nigeria. So there's need for aggressive orientation and simplifying these messages. You know, government documents, policies, and this, they're always bulky, too much of English. So the work of CBOs, NGOs, faith-based organizations is to simplify this information. Like, let them see it through another lens that, this is why I cannot afford to send my child to school. This is why I cannot afford quality healthcare. So if it can start from there, making them to see it.
However, you made a very valid point that most of these people are actually hungry. And it's going to be very difficult to get them to see beyond their hunger. Here you are going to tell somebody that he should vote wisely, vote the right person that he needs to vote so that the next 4 years will be good for him. And then at the end of the day, there's another politician now with 5,000 naira. This guy is broke, he's hungry, he's looking for his next meal. The 5,000 naira is there, it's tangible, he can see it. And you are telling me an abstract story of something that might happen in 4 years. It sounds like a huge task, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. Of course, but what we still, it's not a culture that we can change just in one day. But if we actually sit down and spend time with people, at least gradually we can start to change the culture of selling the future or selling the vote. Of course, it will happen. And you can see how politicians are foaming when CBN rolled out the recent policies that, you know, even the primary elections. And see, it is not only about being poor. Let me be honest. During the party primaries, most of those people that represented, for instance, the APC selected 3 delegates per local government. They are actually top politicians. Top politicians from the local government for them to make that mighty list. And if there's been acquisitions out there that they dollarized or nairalized the process, who are those collecting it? They are actually those ones.
All right. Well, let's get final words from Ibrahim on this issue. What are your final thoughts as we round up the discussion?
Okay, like you mentioned, it's going to be an equivalent task to actually address this issue of civic participation in society and community to actually know what they should be doing and what the government should be doing in society to actually effect changes. But then there is this new trend in the development space where you strategically communicate to people at that level. You don't just go and meet somebody and tell him that, don't vote wisely, or don't vote for these people. There's a way you communicate to them in a way that they will know that this election that we are going into, my thumbprint, that vote I'm going to cast, is going to determine whether I will be able to pay the school fees of my children for the next 4 years. It's going to determine whether I'm going to have access to quality healthcare in the next 4 years. It's going to also determine whether we'll have accessible roads in our local government. It's also determine all these things. Because, okay, just for instance, telling somebody that, do you know that this person that is in this is what this person have access to as a legislator. This is what he's supposed to be doing, but he's not doing it. But you collecting 5,000 naira to cast your vote for this person now means that you cannot go and meet this person, and if this person is doing the wrong thing, that this is what you should be doing, because you've already sold your right, you've sold your vote. So collecting money to vote, necessary. Let's start from there, because whatever quality, the quality of our leader is going to be, it depends on the quality of the electoral process itself. How do we elect our leaders to to position of authority? So if we start from there, we'll be moving one step forward, and from there we'll also know the next step to take. Thank you very much.
All right then. Thank you so much. It's time for us to end the discussion. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak this morning.